I'm joined now by New Jersey Senator George Helmy, who replaced Bob Menendez in Washington. And Senator, there is so much to talk about. But before we get into everything going on in Washington, I need to ask you about congestion pricing, because the federal government has just approved congestion pricing, and that's the last hurdle. How do you feel about it, and do you think it's going to be bad for New Jersey?
Well, I do, but Marcia, let me first say what a pleasure and an honor it is to be with you. Thank you for having me, and equally as important, thank you for what you do. Yeah, I think frankly it's bad for New Jersey and it's bad for the city. Let me start by saying, having been a chief of staff and a two-time Senate staffer, mass transit in this nation is wholly underfunded, and we need to find ways to continue the investments as our population grows, our cities grow, and we need to get people out of cars and into mass transit. That being said, at a time where I think working families in New York City, the surrounding boroughs, and in New Jersey are facing affordability crunches, I think to double toll them as they come over our bridges and into the central business district, I think is a mistake. Governor Murphy has said for a long time that it's a mistake, and you've seen over the last 2 years more and more New York City-based organizations, including business groups, say that this is bad for business and bad for working families in the city.
I just wonder if it goes through, and there are still some court challenges, if you see some businesses decide to relocate in New Jersey because of the cost to the people who work for them.
Yeah, I think that's right. And look, I think, as you know, the Murphy administration continues to pursue this in court. I'm sure they're going to take it up with the incoming federal administration. But at the same time, I think that is going to be the reality. A lot of the employees who come to the city every day are New Jerseyans, mostly North New Jerseyans, or live in our shore communities. And if they can get their businesses to move into Jersey City or Hoboken, where we're already seeing some of that influx, I think it's going to be good for New Jersey. But as I said, Marcia, I think it's bad for the city.
But also, you know, with remote work, you could have more people opting to work remotely, which will also have a bad effect on the tax base in New York City.
I think that's all right. I think it's bad for the city. For sure, it's bad for the constituents who live on our side of the river, who are coming in here every day. And as you've seen, as I mentioned, you've seen multiple trade organizations say it's bad for their own commerce coming in and out of sections of the central business district.
But, you know, the MTA has a problem because it has a 120-year-old subway system that needs massive amounts of money to fix it. So the question is, where do you get the money?
Yeah, I think that's a question for the MTA, and I think there's historic failures of properly funding that. But I don't think that the answer is double tolling constituents coming in on a business day.
So you replaced Bob Menendez in Washington. You assumed his position on the Foreign Relations Committee. I wonder, you know, how you've looked at the foreign policy of the United States, and especially the crisis in the Middle East.
Yeah, it's been a great focus of my time, and I've been fortunate to work for Senator Frank Lautenberg, who obviously paid a lot of attention to what was going on in the Middle East, specifically with Israel, and Senator Booker, who's also a colleague of mine now and on the Foreign Relations Committee. And when I came in, there was the obvious focus on the armed conflict. And I have taken sort of a very specific lane in saying, you can both be supportive of Israel and support of the U.S.'s role in giving it the arms it needs to defend itself against terror organizations and the great sponsor of terror, which is Iran. But at the same time, Gaza is an incredibly dense area, and the crisis is, you know, we are watching one of the great decimations of human life in Gaza.
A humanitarian crisis.
Exactly.
And you also made a trip to Jordan to see how Palestinians are living, and what did you learn from that?
Yeah, I had an incredible 3-day trip to Jordan on the official side, met with government officials, heads of nonprofit organizations, and our own embassy there. And what I saw actually was heartbreaking. I saw warehouses, and Secretary Blinken had just been to one of the warehouses. I saw warehouses full to the brim. They couldn't accept any more stuff, that were full to the brim with food, hygiene products, latrines, because people
that are supposed to go to Gaza.
That are supposed to be going to Gaza. They couldn't get into Gaza.
Why?
For a variety of issues. They didn't have a compliance check from the Israeli government that could be used for dual use, or things were getting stuck at the checkpoints. Or when they got to the checkpoints, Marcia, they couldn't get to the distribution areas. You know, some of these are real security challenges. There is obviously an armed conflict going on, but some of these things I think we're just not pushing hard enough, both from the American administration and the Israeli government, in really viewing the crisis the way we should. What
should we be doing?
I think we need to be exerting more pressure on Netanyahu's government, and bringing all of our efforts to bear. And this was, you know, one of the messages we were sending through the recent vote on Senator Sanders' resolution is it's just not fathomable that a few miles away from the Israeli checkpoints and a few miles away from where women and children and infants are dying, food, medication, and winterized tents as the winter sets in are not able to get across those checkpoints. And so we need to be bringing pressure to bear to ensure that we are bringing more goods to those who need it.
So what we need to explain to our viewers is that Senator Sanders had a resolution to block the sale of armaments to Israel. And you had a sort of a split vote where you voted to give aid to for tank things and for bomb guidance. But
That's right.
You decided to vote against it in terms of sending mortars to Israel. Why did you do that?
We knew going in that these votes were not going to have the necessary majority to pass.
Right.
And so when you look at what we were voting on, I was making a very nuanced but complicated statement in a complicated issue, and I think the American people understand the nuance and complication of this. I support Israel's right to exist. I strongly support the U.S.'s role in supplying it with the resources, as I said. But at the same time, those resources that we give to any country come with rules that the Senate puts in place, and you have to comply with those rules. So my vote said, you know, you mentioned the tank artillery. Those are 2 years away. So to vote in not giving ammunition and munitions that are 2 years away is not in compliance with my view of us supporting Israel. You know, second was the JDAMs, which make dumb bombs into smart bombs. If you're dropping bombs of 2,000 pounds into a dense area like Gaza, I'd prefer they be smart than dumb. So that left me with the third vote, and the mortar rounds have been used in some of the major issues where we've seen civilian casualties. But that was the resolution where I felt, okay, I can make that nuanced statement, both being supportive of Israel, but saying we do need to do better. Non-combatants are dying here.
So what was your reaction when the International Court decided to issue a warrant for the arrest of Bibi Netanyahu for war crimes?
Yeah, I agree with the president's position and the position of the National Security Council here. You know, I don't find it helpful. Now, I'm not privileged to all the research and the warrants. Those are confidential. I don't find it helpful, and I find it rushed. I do worry that it leads to the further isolation of Israel in the world at a time where I think the world needs to be working with Israel on bringing the guns silent so that once again we can get in there, work on the peace accord, the two-state solution, and frankly, you know, people are dying today, and we need to get more aid into Gaza today.
But on the same token, you're concerned about the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
Yeah, well, I think that you can say both things. You can say that we're not doing enough while also saying that it's not a war crime.
So how do you think that the United States policy towards Israel will change under President Trump, and will it really hurt the cause of the Palestinians?
Well, where I always start with hope and optimism, and where I'm optimistic is the president has said before he takes office he wants to see the conflict come to an end. So I'm hoping that the guns will go silent. We'll have all of the hostages, including the Americans, including the New Jersey and Edon Alexander, return safely to their families. And again, that will, once the guns go silent, we can start getting more aid in there, and we can start working towards a two-state solution.
So do you think that there really is the possibility of a two-state solution?
I think there has to be. What other option do we have? What we are doing now in dropping bombs, this concept that we're going to eliminate Hamas and Hezbollah through munitions is false. This is an ideology, and if you are continuing to shell a dense area where there is no economy and people feel no hope, what you're actually doing is breeding more radicalization.
But do you also think, I mean, Trump has been sort of warlike when it came to Iran. Do you think that he's going to go wink, wink, Israel, it's okay for you to bomb Iran, especially to go after their nuclear capabilities?
Well, I hope not. I think where Israel has been incredibly successful is strategically targeting Iran's resources and strategic sites while not causing a significant escalation. And I think, again, where I'm hopeful and listening to the president's words is he will try to bring the guns silent as quickly as possible.
Do you think he's going to be successful?
I hope that he is.
And what about in the Ukraine?
Well, in the Ukraine, I hope that it will continue, and there is very strong, including a resolution that we shut down the other day. There is strong bipartisan support for Ukraine defense in the United States Senate, and I'm hopeful that the president again will work with the Congress to ensure that we are providing a sovereign nation with the resources it needs and defend against Putin's aggression.
Senator, thank you so much. We're going to have to leave it right there for now, but our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. We're here with U.S. Senator George Helmy. I wanted to ask you about your Stop the Scroll bill. I know that you're concerned about social media and you want to have mental health warnings placed on websites. Why is that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Marcia. Our kids are in crisis. I mean, what we've seen in terms of the data, which you know so well, from the late 2010s to now, we're seeing double the amount of kids who are going into hospitals for self-harm. We're seeing 1 in 4 of our young women create suicide plans. We are at a moment of crisis. Now, much of this obviously was already happening. It was exacerbated by the pandemic. And what I wanted to do going into the Senate as a senator this time instead of a staffer was find a place in where my voice was going to help carry something that was started in a bipartisan way. And so I teamed up with Katie Britt from Alabama, you know, conservative Republican senator, also a former staffer, now senator. And we've been advancing bills like Stop the Scroll in order to target big tech's use of algorithms, to target our children and keep them really addicted to the social media, and also utilize the Surgeon General, the premier medical health professional in the United States, saying the negative health impacts of social media are similar to what we were seeing in negative health impacts of cigarettes, and that there should be a warning on youth using social media.
So I'm curious, what got you into public service?
I am a child, basically, of the American dream. My parents immigrated from Egypt in the late 70s. I was born here in Jersey City, New Jersey. Can't get more New Jersey. And I saw my father work hard. He has a master's degree in chemical engineering, but when he first got here, he was a cook at KFC and worked his way up to use his degree in a chemical manufacturing company, and moved us from Jersey City to one of the great suburbs in Glen Ridge. We got great public school education. And so he never pushed us to be in public service, but he always would instill in us the value of this democracy and what this country can do, no matter how you started. And frankly, I would just, you know, it's unfortunate what obviously the senator has been found guilty of, but he would use Bob Menendez as also an immigrant who ascended to the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee as an example of what this great country can do. So I always wanted to be, to give back to those communities that gave me so much. So
is there anything that you encountered in your time in Washington that surprised you?
Surprised me in a good way. You know, I think folks too often think that D.C. is broken and that the politics of partisanship have broken D.C.
Is it broken?
It is not. The good news is there's 100 men and women in the Senate that show up, and they disagree deeply on matters of policy. But for the most part, they show up trying to find something that they can do to advance the needs of American families. And they're decent people, and they want to find ways to collaborate with you in a collegial way.
So what's next for you? You think you might run for public office?
I don't think so. I've always enjoyed being the guy behind the gal or the guy, and I've always been a policy wonk first and foremost. I like to be the guy behind the curtain, but I always reserve the right to come back on your show and make an announcement at some point.
You'd be welcome at any time. So I've read that you played basketball and football in high school. Do you play any sports now?
Yeah, I played basketball in high school, basketball and football in high school. And the older I get, the better I was. Now I'm an active sideline watcher of my 2 boys who play lacrosse primarily and football and soccer.
So where did you meet your best friend?
Where did I meet my best friend? I met my wife, Caroline, at church.
She's your best friend?
She's my best friend.
I love that. Yeah. What's your favorite holiday?
My favorite holiday is, this is an interesting, so we're Coptic Orthodox, so we celebrate Christmas on January 7th. So I say that my favorite holiday is Christmas because on the 25th we get to do the gifts and the unwrapping and sort of that piece of it, and then we get to go to midnight mass on January 6th and really celebrate the birth of Christ.
So Thanksgiving is right around the corner. What are you looking forward to this Thanksgiving? My
mother hosts Thanksgiving at our house every year. It's 30 to 40 people.
Wow.
And it's her and her sisters and that first generation that immigrated over. So while we do have turkey, the turkey is probably yay big because nobody eats it, and it's authentic first generation Middle Eastern food.
It must be. What's your favorite thing?
So my mother makes grape leaves, and they're just wonderful.
Grape leaves,
yeah.
My favorite.
Yeah, well, you're welcome over.
You see, I'm going to come. So I was going to ask you turkey or sides, but obviously you'd rather have the sides.
Grape leaves, and there's specific macaroni with cheese they make. It's really good.
It's really terrific. Yeah. So I guess you're not cooking.
I'm a big eater, not a cooker that day.
On that note, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you. I hope your family has a wonderful Thanksgiving.
You too.
And thank you at home for joining us as well.